For the longest time, both political parties have been taking the black vote completely and thoroughly for granted. But tonight, I'm not talking about the black vote per se. Not as a group. I'm talking about Professor Black Truth's vote. Now, we've had the white media, at least the left wing of the white media, who's been telling everybody that Joe Biden's got this one all wrapped up and that he's going to have the election in a walk. And Donald Trump is going to be repudiated because he said some things that got on the nerves of certain white leftists in the media. But I've been telling you that the white media always tries to make every election seem like a horse race because that is excellent for ratings. It's like the political equivalent of American Idol, except the audience doesn't get to see a song and a dance. They usually just get their pockets slashed and black people get their heads busted in. Now, even though the white media's been putting forward this narrative that Joe Biden's got the black vote all sewn up, I've been telling you, at the black grassroots, we seem to have a much better grasp of what's going on, and it ain't as simple as all that. And no less than Mike the Bigot Bloomberg is crowing about how Biden aides see warning signs in black turnout so far. Bloomberg's an alleged Democrat, by the way. Racist as he is, that lets you know everything you need to know about the Democratic Party. But according to the article, what happened is they're reporting that despite record early vote turnout around the country, there are warning signs for Biden. In Florida, half of black registered voters have not yet voted, but more than half of white voters have cast ballots, according to data from Catalyst, a Democratic data firm. In Pennsylvania, nearly 75% of registered black voters have not yet voted, the data shows. The firm's analysis of early vote numbers also shows a surge of non-college educated white voters who largely back President Donald Trump compared to voters of color who overwhelmingly support Biden. Now you think about that. Donald Trump's had an excellent ground game, as quiet as it's been kept. And now, as we get closer to the election, the white media is having to make some necessary confessions. Because it's a matter of they don't want to look quite as stupid as they did 4 years ago. Although the nation's memory is short, it's not as if they'll take a permanent hit to their credibility, but still, every little bit helps or hurts. We've been hearing that Donald Trump didn't have a chance, and now what we're hearing is from no less than CNN, there are now 3 scenarios where Donald Trump could win the election. We've been hearing that black people are a lock to turn out in record numbers for Joe Biden, even though I have to remind you from time to time the information actually showed that no, black support for Joe Biden is actually lower than it was for Hillary Clinton this time 4 years ago. The Bloomberg article goes on to write, the situation is particularly stark in Florida, where Republicans currently have a 9.4% turnout advantage in Miami-Dade County, a place where analysts say Biden will need a significant margin of victory to carry the state. Well, looks like Florida's not exactly trending toward Biden like they wanted to believe, or like they were telling us. Make it seem like a fait accompli. The white media's been doing a pretty interesting job, though, of reverse psychology. Basically daring black people to vote. You see all these racists out here, they say you're scared of them. You're too scared to face them. Of course, you're going to have, especially with younger black people, hopefully they be goaded and say, oh, we're going to show them. We're going to show them. Yeah, show them what? But if Biden and the Democrats are relying on black voters to turn out, in order to show the good old boys we ain't scarred, then clearly Biden and his cronies have completely and thoroughly misread the political climate of the black community. Now, the Bloomberg article goes on to say disagreements over how to allocate precious resources in the closing days are a common occurrence in a presidential campaign, but what has made these disputes, which have not been previously reported, more serious is that the split has broken along racial lines. So Joe Biden apparently thinks that it's much more important that he reach out to those Biden Republicans, I would imagine. That seems to be that's my read on it. Joe Biden is listening to Rahm Emanuel and the others. We gotta get those casual racists read white moderate votes. That's the future. That's the future base. The niggers are broken bad on us. That's to me, that's what that seems to imply. The article goes on to say some of those advocating for more spending who are largely people of color, that means black, because the Hispanics are simply holding out to see if the Republicans will recognize them as being honorary Europeans. But some of those advocating for more spending who are largely black and say they feel that their community is misunderstood by top Biden officials sent multiple written proposals over the course of several months, including to National States Director Jen Ritter and her staff, outlining ways the campaign could bolster minority turnout. The people familiar with the efforts said they say the documents were ignored by campaign leadership. Well, that says a lot now, doesn't it? Not only is Joe Biden just completely and thoroughly disinterested and contemptuous of what black people in the street have to say to him, he can't even bother to listen to black people who are supposed to be his staff. As far as he's concerned, their job is to make excuses for his 40-plus years of racism and tell us that, oh, that crime bill, that had nothing to do with black folks getting locked up en masse. Why, that was the states. That's their job. And they're coming to him, calling themselves, saying, here's how you reach out to black people. He doesn't want to reach out to black people. What they're selling, he ain't buying. After all, he made it very clear, this is my plan for you niggers, and you need to take this to your people. Take my plan to your people. He's not listening to anything black people have to say. As far as he's concerned, he's barking out the orders. And the only thing that black people can do for him is to do what they're told. Now, to continue, the article says the disagreements have resulted in heated conversations as staff argue over spending and strategy in the final stretch, and the advisors who say they are frustrated still say they're confident Biden will win the election, but they fear leaving anything to chance if the race is close. Well, we can already take the suspense out of this one because Biden has made it clear that he is not about to present any sort of solid pledge for tangibles to black people. He'll post some alleged plan that's supposed to help black people, but it's nothing more than a rebranded version of Kamala Harris's own little lift act. Something that says, well, you know, there'll be some of you niggers will get a couple of pennies out of this, so you ought to be glad for that. See, this is the plan for you. Yeah, but it includes everybody else. You think I'm going to do something that only benefits black people? No! The article then goes on to say that as of October 14th, the Biden campaign and the Democratic National Committee had a combined $331 million cash on hand. That's $333 million, according to their most recent reports with the Federal Election Commission. $333 million. That's how much Biden has on hand as of a couple of weeks ago. Gee, what's Biden been doing with that money, other than figuring out ways that he can float about $100 million of it to his son Hunter? But other than that, apparently he hasn't been spending it on any robust get-out-the-vote efforts, certainly not with black voters. As the article goes on to say, yet a Biden campaign staff member in Florida said coalition directors, those responsible for turning out the vote among specific demographic groups, have never been given a budget, despite repeated requests for funds they can allocate. The staffer said that colleagues have spent their own money to put on voter engagement events, but the lack of coordination with senior leaders has stymied their efforts to do what the staff member called culturally competent outreach in critical parts of the state. Gee, the last time I heard something like this was during the waning days of Kamala Harris's damn-to-fail presidential run. This is the kind of stuff that they were reporting in the last days of her campaign before they had to go ahead and pack up tent and call it quits. Yeah, the money wasn't getting where it was supposed to go. You collected all the millions and millions of dollars, but for some dang reason, when it comes time even to have something that's supposed to be campaigning to black people, Joe Biden is so determined, I'm not giving these niggers anything. Why, I'm not even going to be spending time on them. Forget about spending money. I won't even spend time on these niggers. That's what Joe Biden's concerned himself with. As far as he's concerned, well, you're supposed to show up for me, because if you don't show up for me, then you ain't black. That's his attitude about it. This is about solidifying what's going to be a newly invigorated anti-black political base. That's what they think they're putting together here, their new coalition. Now, buried at the very bottom of the article You happen to have a comment that the writer of this article says that I think sums it up. This should have been the lead. Democrats say Biden's strength among other groups, namely seniors and suburbanites, will compensate for any drop-off in Latino support. Well, there you have it. Rahm Emanuel's Biden Republicans there. Seniors and suburbanites. Same suburbanites who Donald Trump is running around telling these white women in the suburbs, I saved your suburbs from the niggas. I'm going to keep them from coming in the, like me. Will you guys like me? So you see Donald Trump and Joe Biden arm wrestling over the same constituency. This has nothing to do with the number of voters and more to do with whether or not you have a constituency that is willing to go ahead and support white supremacy. Black people who make it very clear our vote's going to be coming with demands, and those demands are going to be directly injurious and directly challenging white supremacy and undermining white supremacy. Well, that's not a constituency you want. Yeah, you can get those votes, but the problem is the only thing they want are policies that are going to derail the white supremacist gravy train. Meanwhile, these seniors and suburbanites, well, they're the ones depending on that gravy train, so it's much better to be fighting with Donald Trump over the same regressive constituency as opposed to picking up those easy votes from black people who are going to be demanding that you destroy the very white supremacist system you are dedicated to uphold. The article then closes by saying, but some of the advisors say they fear the campaign is overconfident, especially after 2016 when voters of color, that means black, did not turn out for Hillary Clinton in key cities like Philadelphia, that's black voters, ain't nobody talking about no Hispanic voters, it's black voters, Detroit, 85% black, I think it's safe to say you ain't dependent on the Latino vote in an 85% black city, and Milwaukee, which contributed to narrow losses in those states. Biden has enjoyed strong support from black voters. Well, they're talking about old black voters. He's enjoyed strong support from black voters who saved his primary campaign with a blowout win in South Carolina. Primaries don't really count. I mean, it's not as if there were a bunch of Republicans running against him in the primary. Followed by big victories on Super Tuesday in states that had large black populations, making it more critical that these voters turn out. So, when you talk about the cities that Hillary Clinton desperately needed, but did not get support for, the white media doesn't talk about any Hispanic cities. They ain't talking about San Antonio. They ain't talking about cities with large numbers of Hispanics. They talk about cities with large numbers of black people. That's who they're depending on. This ain't turn out the vote, this is get out the black vote. And the black vote's looking and saying, you know what? Maybe we've had enough of playing this game. Maybe we've had just about enough of voting for nothing. So while you have Joe Biden and the white media putting on a brave front, what, me worry? While they're sitting there doing that, the reality happens to be they are very much concerned. And this is not about who wins the presidency. Donald Trump and Joe Biden, the similarities completely and thoroughly outnumber any alleged differences. About the only difference I've ever noticed between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is one of them had a TV show. That's about it. I explained to you that elections mean something very different to the 1% than they mean to you. That's the reason why the 1% keeps winning the election no matter who gets in office. They're not relying on numbers, they're relying on the reality. And the reality is they understand the real purpose that elections serve. It's certainly not to do anything for the people, definitely not for black people. Elections are how you take the temperature of the population. Because people who are voting are not a people in revolt. If you should have learned anything from this summer of discontent, it's that you can get a lot done without a single ballot being cast. You can get laws changed without holding a single election. If this summer, the very hot summer of 2020 should have taught you anything, it should have been that. So, white supremacy understands exactly the game that's going on here. It's about getting black people to go to the polls and to give a vote of confidence in a system that hasn't produced a damn thing for us in over 150 years. But how do you get people to do that? How do you get them to vote for nothing? Well, you've got to convince them that there's something far more important than their tangibles at stake. If they come up to you saying, hey, this is going to have to be a business transaction, I need my money, I need my doggone punishment of the police, and we're going to need some land, we're going to need all sorts of federal grants. Well, there's something more important going on. That racist white man in the White House, that meanie Donald Trump, that's more important. That's what you try to do. Try to tell them that there's something more important than their tangibles. And that's how you get them to vote for nothing. It's like I told you about how you get people to turn on their own when it comes to intelligence operations, the Rice method, as they call it, the 4 great motivators that can get people to turn agent for a hostile government. Revenge, ideology, cash, or ego. Well, they do the exact same thing domestically with black people, only cash is never on the menu. Revenge. Don't you want to get even with Donald Trump? You hear all this racist stuff Donald Trump has said. You want to show him, don't you, why the Proud Boys are saying that they're going to keep black people from going to the polls. Oh, it's just like in the 60s when they were lynching black people. Yeah, and the Democrats were letting them get away with it. Many of them were Democrats who were helping to take part in it. So there's the revenge piece. Ideology. This is where Shea Butter Twitter and the black bootlicks come in, trying to convince you you've got something in common with white feminists and white leftists, who they're all fighting for their own pet interests, petty as they are, and whenever they get them, leave black folks out in the cold. So there's the ideological piece. And finally, ego. Why, don't you want to see Kamala Harris, this black, allegedly, woman, become vice president? Oh, black faces in high places. You know how influential and powerful the black vote is? Yeah, stroke Negroes' egos, because there's nothing black people like more than a white person patting them on the head. So there's the ego piece. So you see, that happens to be the way that the Democrats manipulate black folks. But of course, there is one other motivator. And the other motivator happens to be fear. Tell black people all sorts of tall tales about how, as bad as things have been under the Democrats, why, if the Republicans get in there, it'll be even worse. And whenever they get in there, we don't notice any sort of discernible change. The Great Depression back in the 30s hit a lot of people hard, but for black folks, we didn't really notice that much of a difference. We were locked out of Wall Street. Our businesses had been burned down following Reconstruction. So it didn't matter if it was Herbert Hoover or FDR. Our lot didn't change much at all. I'm trying to get my people to start thinking from a position of strength and thinking from a clinical position of what's in your interest. Put your interest first. Have some doggone guts. Recognize the scam going on here. Because whenever we point out that neither party is coming up to black folks and offering anything, you got their paid bootlicks, and these are the fools who are on the cheese and croissant circuit, these bootlick boule Negroes, these shea butter scumbags who are trying to figure out how to make sure that they keep their position that white daddy's given them. They rely on white daddy for speaking fees on these little TV shows, and they get to white daddy lets them write a book and pretend like they're some sort of academic, some sort of power player, some sort of influence peddler when they're not. Well, if you want to keep your little pretend position of influence that white daddy's given you, you better show that you can keep these niggers corralled. And, well, when Roly-Poly Martin makes a proper fool of himself again and says, y'all don't need to be worried about them young voters because they don't matter a damn. Them young voters, they irrelevant. It's them older voters you need to turn out. Yeah, but the problem is the older voters are not going to be able to put you over the top. They just can't. Get over it. This is the incompetent operative class. So you've just had a glimpse of what the reality is. The white media's been changing their tune the last month or so. They've waited longer than usual. Usually they begin the pivot long before now. But now it's a matter of, well, they got to start saying some of the accuracy here. Donald Trump's ground game's been a lot stronger than they've been willing to admit to. And no, it seems as if the black vote is not just going along with the get down, and keep in mind, that's the long game for white supremacy here. All of these agitators and online troublemakers talking about black folks getting their tangibles, we got to invalidate those guys. why, if Joe Biden is able to successfully pull off his new non-black voter coalition, that Frankenstein monster of a constituency that they've been trying to stitch together for the last 4 years, if they're able to turn out some Biden Republicans and some elderly, crusty seniors and such, if they're able to do that, why, that would be great to show these niggers, you guys are old hat here, you guys are obsolete. Who needs the black vote? We've put together our new non-black voter coalition, and don't think they're going to stop with this election. This is a long-term project for these guys. That would be one thing. That'd be one thing to help buoy the hopes and dreams of these leftist white supremacists. But even better would be if they could get black folks to turn out regardless, because it's ultimately the black grassroots that they're trying to neutralize. Most black folks, and let's be honest about it, most black folks are sheep. And as long as it happens to be a white shepherd that's holding that shepherd's crook, they'll go in whatever direction that they want. So now you got, it seems, more and more black people listening to black shepherds. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And the best of all possible outcomes would be if black people turned their backs on the message of black empowerment and turned out in huge numbers to vote for a man who has spent his entire life putting laws on the books to harm and incarcerate black people, a man who palled around with segregationists, a man who co-sponsored the law that created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between rock cocaine and powder cocaine, the man who wrote the 94 crime bill and turbocharged the prison industrial complex, who gave the states $13 billion if they would change their laws, and has been lying about it every year ever since. If this guy can lie big to black people's faces and then still get black folks to turn out and support him in massive numbers, why, that would be the greatest repudiation of the black grassroots possible. Because that's the reason why they are now in emergency mode. They're in panic mode, trying to put together their little Biden Republican base. That's why they're in such a panic, trying to figure out how do we put together some non-black voter base, because what we've been doing has been gaining steam, and they haven't been able to find an answer for it. They haven't been able to undermine it. They haven't been able to shame or dissuade people from it or otherwise tear us down. And that being the case, they need to go to something else. But we're leaving them with fewer and fewer options, as I told you. Black empowerment would not come into its own until we first proved that we could punish white people, until we showed that the people from the dominant society could be punished by us. We could hold them accountable and we could punish them. You call yourself depriving us, harming us, killing us, we can punish you for that. That's when black empowerment comes into its own. This is an effort to stop it before we get that far, because we're not where we need to be, but finally, damn it, we're moving. And this is an effort geared toward making sure that that forward progress is stopped, and hopefully stopped by the very black people who would benefit most from it. That would be the most perverted irony of all. So let me go ahead and expound on why it is that Professor Black Truth's sitting this one out. I'm not telling you what you should do, but I'm telling you what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until somebody treats me with the respect that my vote deserves. And truth be told, I ain't going to be sitting around twiddling my fingers. Because the long game for black empowerment is to make sure that we have voting done the right way. And the right way to vote is you choose the candidate first. You don't sit back waiting to see if Rahm Emanuel, Nancy Pelosi, and the rest of the racists in the DNC are going to present you with some people who are acceptable. They never will. And life is too short and my time too precious for me to spend every 2-year federal cycle having an arm wrestle with some paid stooge for the left wing of white supremacy to get him to do what he's supposed to do. Life's too short for that. I want a situation where they already know before voting even begins, before campaigning even begins, somebody who I've already pre-vetted myself. That's the best way to make sure that I win an election, by choosing the winner before the election even begins. This is the ultimate political aim of black empowerment. We're not going to be having anyone present a slate of candidates to us. We're going to be having our own. But that begins with us getting serious about it and staying on our square. This is the new normal. I'm tired of the people who want to call themselves disrupting the energy and say, well, what you think we're supposed to do? What is we supposed to do? Stupid, we're already doing it. But you got some black folks who are looking for an out. They're looking for an excuse not to have to do the hard work that black empowerment requires. What they really want is to say, well, ain't there an excuse that I can hide behind? Because this black empowerment stuff is a lot of work. Ain't there an excuse I can hide behind? No, there's not. There is no one for us to vote for policy-wise, and we need to be honest about that. No one has bent the knee. No one has come to us and pledged anything. They represent the interests of white people whenever they get in front of us. They come to black community and it's all about the same agenda that's going to be benefiting the dominant society. But whenever they go in front of white audiences, you don't see them banging the drum and saying, here's what black people are going to get and this is what we owe. Nah, that ain't a speech that Joe Biden's ever made. Not this election cycle, not any other. And Donald Trump hasn't done it either. See, they treat black people's concerns as a dirty little thing. Oh, man, we don't talk about that in polite society. We don't talk about that whenever we're in front of decent people. But everybody else, it's never the wrong time or the wrong place to talk about LGBT interests. You can talk about transgender bathrooms all day long. That's an applause line. Why? There's never a setting that's inappropriate to be talking about what the feminists are going to get. That means white women, black women ain't included. To be talking about what the environmentalists are going to get. Why, there's never a wrong time for that, and there's never a right time to be talking about what black people are going to be getting. Yeah, those suburban voters, those would-be Biden Republicans, and those Latinos who you're hoping to finally get on the team, solidly get them on the team, they wouldn't like that. And the Democratic leadership wouldn't like it either. Both Trump and Biden have posted on their websites some pro forma, phony baloney pretend plans for minorities and people of color and inner city. And I compared them for you on multiple occasions on this very YouTube channel. Both Biden and Trump use the exact same language, the same harebrained do-nothing proposals, including the same government agencies. It's copy and paste the same thing for both of them. So they're both pretending as if somehow they've got some great plan when both of them are putting forward the exact same proposals with the exact same agencies and the exact same words. It's a distinction without a difference. It's the same old trick bag. No plan that comes from either party is going to do us any good, and we will not accept any plan that comes from the Democrats' handpicked puppets either. They're not going to get some phony baloney front men out there and have these clowns, these sock puppets saying, here's the plan that black America wants. Y'all need to listen to this plan. Where did this plan come from? It came from Kamala Harris and came from Rahm Emanuel too. Yeah, these Negroes who the white media has suddenly discovered recently and gives them some column space online. That's just free publication for their sock puppets because that's how white supremacy operates. They've already figured out what plan they are willing to push. If we put their backs to the wall and they feel like they don't have any other way out, they'll say, okay, here's our plan. But the plan is one that they wrote up as a trick bag. And they already laid the groundwork by saying, let's go ahead and get Jason Johnson or get Big Bird or some other sock puppet to endorse this plan. And if anybody presses us about if things get bad, this is going to be our contingency. This is going to be our safety valve. Okay, here's our plan for you niggers. Controlled opposition. And you'll be sitting here thinking that you won something when the truth of the matter is you played right into their hands. Black people need to understand what victory means. Victory is not when you're still arm wrestling with your opponent after they allegedly lost. Victory is when the guy is on his knees and you're dictating terms to him and making it very clear. This is going to go one way. You don't say anything. I tell you how it's going to be. You don't tell me how it's going to be. So when Joe Biden calls himself saying, you need to take my plan to the black community, to hell with that. HR 40 hasn't gone anywhere in 40 years because it was never meant to. Democrats controlled all three branches of government from 2008 until 2010. For the first 2 years of Obama's administration, the Democrats controlled the White House, they controlled the House of Representatives and the Senate. And for that 2 years, the Democrats did not lift a finger nor murmur a single syllable about H.R. 40. You didn't have any reparations panels being held for the 2008 to 2010 session. You didn't have any of that going on at all. Barack Obama wasn't talking about any reparations. And Sheila Jackson Lee, she wasn't on television about it neither. No, the Democrats were not saying a word about reparations, nothing about tangibles, nothing about black people getting anything. They had the House, the Senate, and the White House. And when the Republicans got control of the Senate, the Democrats immediately began the same old spiel. Well, we would do something, but the Republicans have got control of the Senate, so we can't do anything, and that's why you got to vote for us. As Malcolm X said, a political football in the game of power politics. Yeah, you need to vote for the Democrats. They need to get control of the Senate back, because then they would do something. Yeah, they would do exactly what they did from 2008 until 2010. Nothing. Come on, tell me all the moves the Democrats were making between 2008 and 2010 for reparations, for our tangibles, to make sure that black people, specifically the black people who came out of slavery in this country, get ours. Tell me about all the moves they were making. And when you ask Democrats what they're going to do about reparations if we do give them back control of the Senate, their answer is nothing. You think I'm going to do something that only benefits black people? No! They're already putting you on notice. You go ahead and vote for me. And what am I going to get if I vote for you? Well, you're going to get nothing. You think I'm going to do something that only benefits you? Forget about that. Now vote for me. Elections are a business transaction. You must exchange something tangible of monetary value with me if you want my vote. No tangibles, no vote. But as Rahm Emanuel and other Democrats like Thomas Friedman of the New York Times said, they don't want this election or any other election to be transactional. Can you imagine that? Here these guys are coming up to black people and saying, you guys think this is supposed to be some sort of business transaction. Yeah, that's what it is with everybody else. Well, that's with them. With you, this is not a business at all. You owe us the vote. You niggers need to go along with the get along, and then that's the end of it. They want for it to be ideological, they say. Well, the problem with ideology is you can't take it to the bank. Ideology only exists in your head, and it can change depending on how you feel or the circumstances in front of you. Tangibles don't change. The Democrats don't tell the white elites like Jeff Bezos that he should stop demanding tax breaks and that he should be satisfied with his $70 billion. They don't tell him, you don't need that $70 billion. Why? What you need is an ideological victory. Say, Jeff, you're kind of concerned about the environment, or you got some pet issue that you're concerned about. Hey, we'll go ahead and give lip service to whatever your pet issue is. And in exchange, you got to come off that $70 billion. Don't worry about that money. This is not about a transaction. This is about ideology. See, it doesn't change anything. An ideological victory doesn't do anything. But don't you feel like someone validated your worldview? That's what it's about, to see if they can get away with giving you nothing. And a lot of black folks are dumb enough and simple enough and silly enough to go for it. Well, the white supremacists who run things, they never settle for ideology. They only want tangibles. The tangibles that we built and that we made possible. The days of these politicians on the left or the right coming up to us empty-handed, and on election day when they ask for my ballot, I'm going to give them the same thing they gave me. Now, you've also had some fools running around talking about the argument about judges. Let me tell you something. The federal judgeships argument is largely irrelevant where we're concerned. White feminists, gays, and immigrants, those who are concerned about national policies, they're hot and bothered about it because they need the courts to legalize their interests since the legislatures are largely in gridlock. See, judgeships matter a lot to those guys because they've gotten things from the government, things that can be taken away. Black people have not. What court ruling is going to be impacting black people? We haven't gotten a damn thing, so it's not as if you're going to be going to the courts and I'm going to lose something in federal court. Haven't gotten a damn thing to lose. And the same thing goes for the right-wingers. Where black people are concerned, the courts are neither liberal nor conservative. They're just white. They always rule against us on the off chance we ever go there. Hell, Byron Allen thought that he was going to be getting a victory in court. Well, actually, what he wanted was a settlement that would give him what he really wanted, and he got it. So you see, it's not about federal judgeships. If the issue was really as perilous in the judiciary as these white liberals claim it is, then shouldn't it be an easy thing for them to bend the knee to our tangibles if there's truly a political and legislative Armageddon that's about to break out because of all of these crusty, dyed-in-the-wool right-wingers that Trump is front-loading the court with? Then shouldn't these white liberals be looking and going, look, Biden, whatever the hell these guys want, you got to give it to them. This is bigger than reparations. This is bigger than that $20 trillion price tag. You got to see the big picture, Biden. Just go ahead and cut the black folks their check, get them on board, and we got to make sure that we save the country, right? It should be an easy choice, but instead they're looking and going, well, I don't know. Yeah, that lets you know how serious it is to them. They love doing that scare talk and trying to put you in a panic. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. So you got to do what we say. Don't think, just do what we say. Oh, you can't. This is too important for you to be thinking about. You just got to do what we say. Those high pressure sales tactics. You got to sign on the dotted line here. Don't worry about reading the fine print. Don't worry about thinking it over. If you don't sign on this now, well, you will have missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime. So you got to sign on it now. Well, shouldn't I get something for my vote? This is too important for you to do that. It's too important for that kind of thinking. If you don't vote the right way right now, why, there won't be any tangibles for the country to give you. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Well, what tangibles am I going to get? You think I'm going to do something that only benefits black people? No. That's the conversation. That's where it goes. So obviously the issue of federal judges can't be that important to these white liberals. Otherwise, they would be acting like it, and they're not. They just want you to think there's some sort of life and death proposition at stake. Let me tell you something. The cops killing black people, these guys are not getting acquitted or having the charges otherwise dismissed at the federal level. It is state and local prosecutors, mostly Democrats, and local judges who are refusing to charge these race killers. It is local and county officials who are orchestrating the reduction of the charges or throwing out the verdicts or otherwise undermining the judicial process. The reason that Breonna Taylor's murderers have not been indicted isn't because of a federal case. The case against them hasn't been federal at all. It's been what's going on at the county and state level in Kentucky. That's what's happening. The federal judiciary's got absolutely nothing to do with it. So what the hell am I supposed to be getting all scared about who Donald Trump's putting on the bench? Family, I need you to learn to know the difference between what affects us locally and what affects us federally. Now, there are some things that potentially could affect us federally, but the white liberals, they don't know what they are, or rather the few who might know what they are don't give a damn about them. So don't go letting them conflate the two. The federal level is largely what's in the interest of the white special interests. These are the things that are important to the white special interests because those are the people who have the ability and who the system allows to actually put policies in place at the national level. You, on the other hand, they don't do that with. Don't let them go telling you that you have a dog in a fight when you don't. Democrats at the national level should be running primary challengers to all these Democrat prosecutors and judges who keep rubber stamping the murders of black people, but they don't. Democrats should be bragging about how they're going to run Daniel Cameron out of office, run him out of town on a rail. They should be bragging about how they're going to be running on a platform of punishing the police, but they're not. Instead, Joe Biden is promising to give Breonna Taylor's murderers $300 million in federal funds. Now, if the Democrats really were not on the side of white supremacy, on the side of the cops killing black people, then it should be easy for the Democrats to say, hey, we're going to make sure that Bob McCullough and any other Democrat who calls themselves protecting the killers of black people, you guys are going to get primaried. We're going to starve you for funding. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure you're out of here. We're going to make it where nobody supports you, nobody endorses you. We're going to be using the money and leaning on you heavy. We're going to do everything we got to do to get you out of there. Daniel Cameron should be an easy call for the Democrats to make and say, we're going to get him out of the paint. That should be an easy one. But they're not doing it, and because it's not about whether it's a Republican or Democrat who's the prosecutor, it is about the policy of white immunity from law when it comes to killing black people. The enforcement arm of white supremacy is who Jeff Bezos and Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, all of them depend on an unjust system having an organized apparatus of violence that can kill with complete and thorough impunity. That's the function that the police carry out under white supremacy. They're not there to protect you, obviously. They are there to protect the people who really matter. And the politicians understand that. No system of corruption can endure without having a dedicated apparatus solely dedicated to dispensing violence. That's the police. So no, Biden's not going to be proposing a raft of federal legislation to punish the cops. You're not going to see a police equivalent of the '94 crime bill. Same way that following the protests on his watch, Obama signed the Blue Alert law. Well, we want the cops to know that, granted, there's 50 laws already vigorously enforced that say if you even look at a cop the wrong way, you'll get life in prison. Well, we just want them to, this is a vow of confidence. Yeah, this executive order is a do nothing something or other, but it's my way of making sure the fraternal order of police understand that we're on your side and we need you to vote for us. So we're going to come down on those niggers hard as hell. When you kill some black folks, we're going to make sure they understand that the police are not going to get punished, and I'm going to sign off on it. That's what that Blue Alert executive order that Obama signed was all about. It was about reassuring the fraternal order of police, the same FOP who rushed to Facebook to lie and claim that Rakia Young, who they brutally beat bloody and used her baby son for a perverted photo op, the Fraternal Order of Police couldn't wait to tell the public lies about how this child was running around barefoot until the cops came and saved him. We're not the enemy. We're the only ones standing between you and anarchy. This is Obama's friends and Biden's friends. Nobody's punishing the police. Nobody is pledging us our tangibles or pledging to punish those who harm us. So it looks to me like I ain't got no damn reason to vote. And finally, the reason that I'm not going to be voting is because no one has asked me to. Oh, I've been ordered to vote, condescended to vote. Pathetic attempts to shame me into voting, insult me into voting, harangued, harassed, maligned, lied to, ignored. But I haven't been asked to vote. Oh, I've had crusty old white racists tell me, if you don't know, then you should vote for me. If you ain't sure who to vote for, then you ain't black. Oh, yeah, I've had some white guy who spent his entire life talking down to black people, insulting black people, and telling me I should vote for him. And on the other side, you got a guy with a lifelong racist record who he can't even get as far as patronizing. As far as he's concerned, you're living in hell. What you got to lose? You haven't told me what I have to gain. Telling me what I got to lose, that ain't good enough. What's in it for me? What do I have to gain for voting for the orange man? So no, you got two guys using the exact same method. I'm entitled to your vote. You owe it to me. No one is entitled to my vote. I do not owe it to anyone because no one's done anything that I am indebted to them for. And my vote comes with conditions. Now, ordinarily you would call that democracy, but of course, the United States is no democracy at all. It's a perverted ethno-state. Even so, no matter what system I live under, I don't give my agreement, my money, my time, or my ballot to anything or anyone unless I know what I'm getting out of it. And that's something far higher than mere democracy. That's called business. And business is the way that you teach people to take you seriously. When people understand that anytime they come up to you, something's going to be required, that's how you teach people you're going to respect me. It's like I've always told you, if you want to be popular, or at the very least, if you want people to pretend to tolerate you, just go ahead and say yes to everyone. Say yes to everybody and you'll be popular because they can use you for a doormat and take you for granted. But if you want people to respect you, then you had better start learning how to say no. And you better mean it when you say it.